It's done. It's over. Put all the cars away. Racing's gone, but the podcast continues. And that podcast is the Lapdown Podcast. And I'm Alex, and the next voice you're going to hear is Dan. And we've run out of races to talk about now. So let's hope some stuff happens over the off-season. But we've got plenty to talk about from Abu Dhabi. Dan, how are you doing, my friend?
I'm very well. Yeah, it's done and dusted. There is no break in the world of Formula One social media content, though, is there? It is non-stop.
No.
And well, I'll use this opportunity whilst we're on the opening lap at the moment before we crash into turn one. But what I will do is just say, if you are enjoying this, drop us a little like, subscribe to the YouTube channel, follow us on Instagram and TikTok and X and whatever other accounts that we've got. And also, because we're not particularly creative, if there are any ideas that you would like to see us cover over the winter break, please drop them in a comment for us. And we will endeavour to do our best to cover those off. So, but yes, in summary, I'm well.
Yes, we've got 94 days or something. I think Ted might have said in his notebook until we're back on track in Bahrain for testing.
That's
so we've got 94 days worth of. It's not long, but then it's also fucking forever. Can we just have Formula One back already, please? Is right. My summary on it. But no,
I
think everybody needs a little break.
Drive to survive.
No, I think
just more.
You can tell the drivers needed a little break, can't you? The drivers towards the end of the season started getting a little bit last day of term and a little bit catty, and it's hot and they're hungry, and it just all got a little bit handbagsy all the way through, to be honest. Mainly down into turn one, thanks, Max.
Yeah. That was stupid, wasn't it? That was so stupid.
Yeah. Yeah, it was.
I don't know. How do you want to approach this? Because it's clearly the big topic, isn't it? Like, well done, Max, for winning the World Drivers' title. We'll speak about McLaren in a bit as well. Well done to them.
Yeah.
We'll speak about Lewis. Like, well done for Lewis. That was a fantastic drive as a sign-off for Mercedes. We needed more donuts. And there are other things that we want to talk about with, like, post-season testing. But clearly the big talking point, because as fun as Abu Dhabi was, and there were moments where people did other driving into people, Bottas and Piastri, this was the bit that kind of, or I felt anyway, enabled Abu Dhabi to essentially be an interesting Grand Prix.
Yeah, it brought a sudden amount of jeopardy that wasn't really there, if we're honest, in that World Constructors' Championship battle. We tried to hype it up. We had to have something worth hyping up. Ferrari were always very much the outsiders, and it was going to have to be McLaren sort of throwing it away through one means or another for that to happen. And, you know, the fact that we had a Ferrari double podium, and just because Lando won, that was it. And it was a little bit anticlimactic that, like, oh, hang on, they're both chasing him down. So, oh, if he wins, he wins.
Yeah, it still doesn't matter.
It still doesn't matter. Turn one, it's just a opportunistic move by Max. I don't think it's his worst move ever. I jokingly said to you, oh, Max Verstappen's been a terrorist again. If you watch it from the outside, it doesn't look great. When you take it in context of it's turn one and he's looking down the inside and whatever, okay, he's gone in a bit hard. What I find very awkward about the Verstappen-Piastri coming together is people trying to put any level of blame on Oscar Piastri. Now, I have the accent that means I need to defend this boy to the end of the world, and I like McLaren. But there is no percentage of blame on Oscar Piastri for that. Like, he shouldn't have to move out of the way. Oh, well, you knew Max was going to do it. Okay. And it was against the rules. You can't. If we suddenly have 19 drivers that start driving worried about Max and what he's going to do to bully them, then the sport's gone. We're done at that point. You know, Oscar's taken the racing line through turn one from the front row of the grid. You can't take the first corner from the front row of the grid on the racing line looking behind you in the hopes that everyone's going to brake. You just need to race. And yeah, Max sort of went from taking ownership of it, and I think saying it was unlucky or something, to then having a sulk about the fact he got a penalty, and then going and apologising to Oscar after the race. It's like, pick a lane, man. Preferably not the lane into the side of another driver. But yeah. It's just all, look, it is what it is. It's a racing incident that's worthy of a penalty, but I will not accept any chatter of Oscar was partly at fault and Oscar could have done more to avoid it, because I just don't think he... He could have. Absolutely. He shouldn't have to. And we can't have 24 races next season where people are thinking that.
No. I mean, who would watch the sport if for 24 times and 20 cars, if Max started last each week, just jumped out the way, stamped on the brakes down the back straight, and just got out of Max's way to the point that he was then leading by lap 2 anyway? What a completely ridiculous statement that is to make. And here's, like, for me on that incident, Oscar didn't take the racing line because he was more than a car width away from the apex of that corner to allow for the fact that he knew there was going to be some suicidal Dutch dive bomber coming down the inside. Max fucked up. It was not a very good move by Max at all. He had the inside front off the circuit, inside that white line, and still couldn't get round the corner because he took too much speed into that corner, which would lead you to, which is a move of somebody that is not a particularly good a good racing driver. He got it wrong. People make mistakes, and that's absolutely fine. Was he unlucky?
Yeah.
No. He fucked up. He fucked up. That's it. At the end of it, he fucked up. And then he had a squinny because he got penalised for it. I like the punishment, to be fair. I do struggle with the same level of the 10 seconds for Piastri for bumping into the back of Colapinto to Verstappen spinning somebody round and actually impacting a race. However, what I will say, if that stewarding is consistent from Abu Dhabi now to the end of time, I'm completely okay with it, because if it's a way that we can enjoy Formula One without having maniacal dive bombs from anybody and taking people out of races, that's fantastic. And maybe even those punishments need to be more severe. I don't know. Maybe they need to be 15 seconds rather than 10, because unless you actually start to punish people for these things, they're never ever going to learn. And we are just going to continually cycle back through the same incidences over and over and over again. And we're just going to have these same ridiculous conversations online where it's, well, he should have just got out of the way. No, he shouldn't. He shouldn't. Nobody has a divine right just to weasel their way through. That's not how it works. You don't just go, oh, bollocks, it's Max. Okay, well, I'll just change down a couple of gears here and I'll indicate left just so he knows I'm going to stay on the left-hand side. Like, what a stupid thing to say. But he's a polarising character. And I think... Yeah. And we kind of know why, I think, anyway. We know society loves an anti-hero, don't they? And Max was the anti-hero. He turned up, he took the fight to Lewis, and if you use kind of a Batman and a Joker type kind of reference here, and I realise that's fictional, but I've got a non-fictional reference to follow this up. But Lewis was the Dark Knight. He was the saviour for good. He was the dominant factor. He fights for equality on and off the track, and he has this larger than life personality. And a lot of people don't like that. That's kind of understandable. I can understand why you don't like seeing the same person winning every time. Max turned up, did whatever the hell he wanted in a Joker type situation, but managed to take the fight to Batman. And actually people kind of ignored a lot of the rubbish because they knew the fact that they were going to have this Batman versus Joker battle. And that's what they wanted. So much so, really, with Batman and Joker. We know we shouldn't like Joker. He blows up hospitals, for one example, but people go dressed as him as Halloween. Like, this is how this works. And all the while that we live in a society where you've got people writing letters to serial killers in prison and, like, loving them and romanticising them, we stand no chance at a chap that might occasionally dive bomb another Formula One driver. So there's my reference about Max Verstappen. Clip it up, put it on TikTok, and let the hate roll in, because I've basically just called all Max Verstappen fans the same people that write love letters to serial killers in prisons. Thank you for joining us this week. I'm done.
There you go. And that's the end of the podcast. It's all over. No, there is a lot to be said, I think, for his villain arc, or his character arc, full stop, about how he came into it. And I do think perhaps he does get more rope because he toppled Lewis and the way he came in. I think if he'd have come in racing like this, and maybe it was... If we'd have had the competitive nature of this season for the last 4 years, I think it's all seemed very differently. But no, I agree with you. I like the 10 seconds. I think it's interesting with the penalties, because everyone complained that the penalties, including the drivers, the penalties weren't harsh enough, and that it was too easy to make up 5 seconds. And you go, oh, sweet, well, I'll get rid of Oscar, and then I'll just tear off 5 seconds down the road. That's not that hard to make up. 10 seconds now, when you see them sat in the pit for 10 seconds, it's like, did you get the stopwatch wrong? Because this feels like 80 seconds. Like this is... And it's never a 10-second penalty either. It's sort of an 11-second penalty because they never ace the actual stop itself because the muscle memory is not quite right. Yeah. But they also then never get the 10 seconds right either because they always... You don't want to be 9.9, so they generally tend to go somewhere between 10.5 to 11, plus a slightly longer pit. It's 13.5, 14 seconds generally. But, yeah, if it neatens them up a little bit, there'll be people that go, oh, it's hard racing, stop trying to over-police it, whatever. We had hard racing around the final turn on lap 58 or whatever it was with Lewis and George, and we had hard racing in Qatar. Oscar and Charles, I think, side by side, and you think, well, there's no way they both make it through this corner, and guess what? They both made it through the corner. I think it's grand. I felt like I understand it's just the rule and it is about safety, but a 10-second stop-go for a wheel being not quite on, that felt harsh. Felt a little bit bad for Liam there, bearing in mind he self-declared the wheel didn't come off and then they fixed it up. 35-second penalty feels a lot for that. I understand why it's there, but...
I think like Martin said, and I think it probably... I'm going to go purple on the Max Verstappen situation one last time before we kind of draw a line under that. But with the Liam Lawson thing, I think it just highlights the fact that it is actually a team sport, which probably does lead into that kind of McLaren winning the World Drivers or the World Constructors Championship quite nicely. But hear me out with this Max Verstappen strategy for 2025. I would like a secret meeting between Toto, between Zach Brown, and between Fred Vasseur. And it's almost like Freemasonry. So it's kind of somewhere in like the catacombs of some city somewhere. And they all have to have like a special handshake to be able to get in the door. Here's my theory, right? If Max is going to drive like this, and we have seen him drive like this for the last half a dozen weeks because he's got himself under pressure. He's been perfect the year before because no one could get near him and we never heard about him or saw him on a broadcast. But since he's been under pressure, he's reverted to type. Say... Every 6 races, there was kind of like a non-agreed revolving kind of rota as to which one of the 2 Mercedes, 2 Ferrari drivers and 2 McLaren drivers were just going to go, nah, do you know what? I'm not just going to get out the way. Don't worry about it. And if then every week Max took out a Lewis and then an Oscar and then a Charles and then a Kimi and a George and a Lando... He's not going to win the World Drivers' title like that because every 6 weeks of the 24, so they can all do a quarter each. He's going to get a minute's worth of penalties over the course of 6 races. Plus, it's going to be more because he's going to lose his shit over this. And everybody else, each one of those 5 drivers, so long as it's spread out equally over the 24, will get an equal shot at winning the World Drivers' titles without having to worry about a maniacal Dutchman.
It's a bold approach. I don't hate it. I would say...
Just drive into him.
We've got... What are the Saubers contributing overall? It's not a huge amount of racing.
True.
Can we go and have a... can they get their ring and join the Stone Corner Cutters and we just use them as a... we just play some Total Wipeout and they're like the wall with the boxing gloves. Except it's 2 bright green cars. One of them's driven by... I mean, Hulkenberg feels like he's got that in him. Hulkenberg,
I think he
just reeks of a bloke that would be happy just to... when you walk behind someone and you think it's going to be funny, you just give them a little ankle tap and then they trip over themselves. Tell me that Nico Hulkenberg would not be willing to do the Formula 1 equivalent of ankle tapping Max Verstappen. I'm going to say every week. Sod it. Let's just say every week he just spins him at some point... And we'll just see what happens. I think there's value in it. Yeah. I think there's a lot of value in it.
I think so. Blue flags,
what
Nico.
I will say as well, just to round that off.
Just goes.
Yeah, fires it down. Sorry, radio wasn't working. Drink wasn't working. Oh, did I hit him? Oh, balls. The last thing I'll say on it, the Oscar penalty felt very harsh. And then also at the same time, I'm fine with the Oscar penalty. Because he ran into another driver. Don't do that. He ran into another driver because, like I often do in F1 24, I just received a notification perhaps, and I thought, I'm going down a long straight here. I can just have a quick peer over to see what that email is. Oh, it's a bank statement. That's fine. Oh, that's Colapinto. He kind of felt like that's what it was. He just kind of forgot to brake, and it wasn't malicious. And we don't know if that's what caused the puncture on Colapinto, because he seemed to run into everyone on that opening lap anyway. But don't bump into the back of someone else. There's a lot of important aero bits back there and whatever, and it was a very avoidable accident. If you hit someone, it's 10 seconds. Fine. It's slightly funny that Oscar had got all sassy on the radio before that, and then did his own move of a non-world champion. I'm not sure that was his best effort. But yeah, I was fine with it. It felt harsh, but also you don't hit someone.
Did Bottas get a 10-second penalty for taking out Magnussen?
Even better, Valtteri Bottas, who's no longer in the sport, has a 5-place grid drop for his next Grand Prix.
Oh, that's so good.
He's joining the Button Club now, where he's got, in theory, a perpetually unserved penalty. I think there's actually a decent chance we see Bottas again in the sport. I think he's probably, if I'm Cadillac, I'm thinking, fuck me, Valtteri Bottas has sat there. That bloke knows how to drive. That's experience for the team. We can bring a Colton Herta in, or a younger, we can bring a fashion driver in, if you like, and then we can bring Valtteri Bottas, who we know is going to give us, like when Danny Rick came back into VCARB, and they were like, okay, he's not driving super quick on track, but bloody hell, he's bringing some value to this team. I think there's a decent chance that
he knows how to
Bottas'
make
first race of the 2026 season could be -5, is what I would say. Also, what a move, Valtteri. Just thought, nah, you don't need this entire side of your car.
Wild.
It just didn't break. But yeah, no, good fun. Well done, McLaren. Well done. Genuinely well done. I'm not going to accept I'm not accepting a lot of things today. I'm not going to accept this McLaren storyline of they nearly blew it, or they tried to bottle it, or they tried to throw it away. No, they didn't. They did incredibly well to win the thing, and they finished 4th in the Constructors last year, and they had a car in Bahrain last year that tried to drive backwards for most of it. And now, this year, they've won the Constructors with a bloke that finished every racing lap. Again, shout out Oscar Piastri. Max tried to ruin that, but he finished every single racing lap this year, and they had a car that, got shown up at some tracks, performed really well at others. That's how cars tend to work in this sport. And they reeled in what everyone assumed. We said it on this podcast. Round 4, round 5, Checo Perez is on the podium at that point. Let that sink in for a minute. And we're all at that point going, well, sport's done. See you in 25, everyone. And they've overhauled that and won it, not comfortably, reasonably comfortably. And no, they didn't throw it away. They did very well to win it. Let's actually be positive for once.
Yeah, I think that's lost on a lot of people sometimes. I think you are actually allowed to be positive about things. And to continue that positivity, why don't we speak so highly about how Ferrari kind of dragged themselves back into that Constructors' Championship? Not the fact that McLaren slowed down. Ferrari developed a really good car, and they had 2 very, very good drivers behind it. And they gave McLaren I don't know how nervous McLaren actually were going into Abu Dhabi, but for the media hype of it, there was a battle going into the last race of the season, which is essentially what we want. Yes, okay, fine, it's not as sexy as the World Drivers' title. Nobody glorifies a team like they glorify a driver. But there are 2 championships to be won during the course of a Formula One season, and it went down to the last race, and McLaren came out on top. So good on you, McLaren. I'd say the same if it was Ferrari, if they'd overturned it. Maybe, would I even say McLaren had bottled it if Ferrari had overturned it? No, I probably wouldn't. But yeah, fantastic. Good. And everything is just pointing towards 2025 being just a fantastic year of Formula One racing or crashing. It just feels like a fantastic year. Yeah.
Yeah. To be
and
to be a fan of the sport, it's a big year 2025 to like pointy, funny shaped cars going quickly around squiggly circles.
Yes, or squares if you're Vegas.
Or squares if you're Vegas, or Baku, or Monaco, where you just kind of a parade. Shout out to Fred Vasseur as well, just on your
Monaco's
Ferrari. Posh. Yeah, Monaco's posh. I know. Shout out Fred Vasseur as well, as part of your pat on the backs for Ferrari. I think that bloke's come in and done incredibly well. In evidently, you never quite know what a team principal's doing, and I think Stella is the same at McLaren. They're obviously doing something because the turnaround is too pronounced and the differences are too pronounced for that not to be trickling down from the top. I would love to go for a beer with Fred Vasseur. He seems like just the greatest bloke I've ever seen. His ability to just fuck with people in such a fun uncle way at every opportunity. The bloke tried to steal the World Constructors' Championship trophy from a photo shoot in front of Zach Brown. What more could you need? That tells me all I need to know about Fred Vasseur. But no, I agree with you. I think I'm a McLaren fan, and I still would have gone, you know what, how good was that from Ferrari to just haul that in, and you've binned off one of those two drivers. But no, I think very, very good. Also very, very good. And here we go. I'm going to wind you up and let you go here because this is your segment of the pod now.
No, I'm all good.
Lewis Hamilton.
I've used all my my purple lap points already, so I'm done. I'm just chilling
Lewis
for the rest
Hamilton,
of it.
funnily enough, still a very good Formula One racer. Can still drive a car in quite a quick way. Who knew?
We all knew.
Yeah.
We all knew. We did. We all knew. Did Lewis know sometimes? Maybe not. Could he be bothered a lot of the time? I think is more likely to be the answer to that question. I'm excited to see how he goes in red next year because they have clearly got a car that's quick, and we have a driver that still, so far on occasion of what we've seen in 2024, has the ability to be very, very fast. And Abu Dhabi is one of those occasions that he's shown his ability to be very, very fast. I'm sure there was an added bit of motivation in that kind of, I want to sign off well. And obviously they cocked him up, didn't they? Or sorry, they didn't cock him up, to be fair. But they kind of did, because they kind of admitted fault to it, didn't they? They sent him out too late. But then also there was a bollard just flopping around in the middle of the circuit, which didn't help. And it was a fantastic drive. If he'd have qualified normally, he wouldn't have won the race. I don't think anybody was catching Lando that day. I think he was superb, and I think he probably had more pace than what he needed. I think he managed it very, very well. But could I have seen him on the podium? Absolutely. Could I have seen him in second place? 100%. I think you could have done based on that drive and what we saw. It was fantastic. Obviously, he probably would have started on a different strategy, which would have then kind of fudged those kind of setups slightly differently. But it was brilliant. It was brilliant. And yes, it was a little bit cheesy, which I know is something you're going to say when Bono came out over the radio after the pit stop and said, Lewis, for one last time, it's hammer time and all this other stuff. But to be fair, I mean, it's cheesy, but it's nice cheesy. It's kind of warm and fuzzy cheesy, isn't it? It's kind of like a melted camembert kind of cheese. It's not like a harsh kind of Stilton. It's just nice, and it feels gooey, and it feels safe, and you like it. But also as well, I did kind of wonder with it, and I went, with this ridiculous kind of setup with Drive to Survive and you people that have come into this sport, do they have to have one eye on the fact that Netflix are watching, and they'll go, oh shit, there's going to be a really good quote that's going to come up here on Netflix because I'm going to be... I honestly, I wouldn't even be surprised if somebody in the Netflix directorship hasn't given Bono a script and gone, you need to say it. Say the line, Bono. Would it shock you?
No. I think we all knew it was coming. It was very say the line Bono. Very say the line Bono. And it felt a little self-aware as well, I think, because it didn't when we've heard hammer times in the past, there's just a little bit more oosh behind them. They're a little bit more and I understand at that point he was running like P8 or something, and it's maybe a little bit harder to get yourself up and about for a hammer time when we're talking about can you get back to P4? But yeah, look, we all knew it was going to happen. It felt a little bit forced. But I would rather a slightly forced one than everyone be like, oh, he didn't say the thing. I think we're all a little bit better off for him having said the thing. The bollard, by the way, how are we the pinnacle of motorsport when someone hits a traffic cone and then their weekend is ruined in the pinnacle of motorsport? And they didn't even hit a traffic cone. Another driver, Mario Kart, threw a traffic cone at them. Why do we need a bollard on that corner? I think Martin might have asked it at some point. Like, actually, no, it might have been Ted, I think. Ted asking the big questions, as he often does. But there's a wall there, and there's not as if you can cut that corner because the Formula One cars are quite big and it's basically just one big curve and you'll lose time anyway. So why is there a bollard there? We just don't... Get rid of these potentials. Yes, it was a freak accident and it could hit him, it could have just missed it or whatever, but take away the chance of it, surely. We don't need a bollard there.
I mean, why is there not a bollard on the inside of every corner in every circuit around the world? There we go.
Maximum
More
bollards or no bollards. That's it.
All the bollards. Just give me bollards.
But
no, I don't know.
Like
hang on.
whack-a-mole. Whack-a-mole when you go to an arcade.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
What if, and hear me out here, Monaco next year, right? Just through the bus stop. Bollard stop, right? And through the bus stop chicane, they install a whack-a-mole style bollard deployer that just whoop, 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 whoop at various points, but it only goes off like 15 times or something over the course of the Grand Prix. Or maybe each team gets one bollard press that they can deploy at their leisure.
Okay.
They get one blue shell that they can stick a bollard up someone. I just think it might make the Monaco Grand Prix better.
So what you're saying is 15 times throughout the course of the Monaco Grand Prix, there will be a chance that a car will be launched into the harbour or into a grandstand and kill 1,000 people.
No, bollards aren't that strong, mate. The bollard buckles.
Oh, okay.
It's only she's plastic.
Well,
and
anyway,
hollow
I've got an idea. I've got an idea, and it's quite boring, but hear me out. You know these white lines that go round either side of the circuit.
Yes.
And you know that like there are. It sounds crazy, but it's quite mad. This, but like there's sensors, isn't there? And then the people that are stewarding know that a car has gone past one of those white lines on either side of it, and which they shouldn't do because that's naughty. Why don't they just use those? Why do they need a bollard to see whether someone's cut the corner? Why don't they just... It sounds crazy. It does sound mad, doesn't it? But what about a sensor? What
I'll say to that is they had sensors and cameras and a brand new camera that they were very proud of and they bigged up at turn 1, and they still managed to get 2 quite high profile track limits calls wrong in one quali session. So
it's a stupid idea then.
Yeah. Serious effort by the stewards, by the way. Not once but twice to get a track limits call wrong. I genuinely think the Perez track limits might be a dead heat. I don't think you get a huge amount of dead heat track limit stuff, but I don't think you could see any of the sidewall of his tyre on the line, but I also don't think you could see any non-line between the line and his tyre. I think he might have perfectly, fit through the gap. I will question what processes are in place that was deleted so quickly and then reinstated almost as quickly, because surely that needed closer looking at. That needed, can you zoom that please? Zoom it up, zoom it up, zoom it up, zoom it up. No, I'm going to have to overturn my decision there. Like, can we not have maybe a flag system? Can you maybe tell Red Bull, hey, that lap's under investigation because she was close. So we're just telling you now, stewards are looking at that one. It's up to you if you decide you want to mess, a little bit like the handing the position back thing. It's up to you if you decide to take this into your own hands and just go again anyway, but we're just telling you.
Yeah, okay.
We've sent that lap to VAR because that's very close, and we'll be with you shortly.
Yeah.
Because you can't bin a lap and then unbin a lap. We can't have that. We've got to have one decision, the correct decision.
Yeah. The correct decisions normally help, as a general rule of thumb.
Yes.
Right decisions are better than wrong ones.
Yes.
But it was Sergio Perez, and who really cares? Because he's not going to be on the Formula One grid next year. And I mean, technically, technically, I guess it wasn't his fault this time around. It was our friend Valtteri Bottas up to no good again, wasn't it, on that opening lap?
But I told you, get him in.
Would it surprise you? Would it surprise you if Red Bull haven't just turned Perez's car off and just gone, nah, that'll do? I mean, if they'd have done that, you'd have hoped that it would have been at like the furthest point back from the pit lane just to make his life even more uncomfortable to get back. Or maybe it was, to be fair, because maybe he had to walk through that hotel to actually kind of get back to the pit lane. I'm not sure, but like, I mean, it was quite a befitting end for what has been a terrible 2/3 of a season for Sergio Perez, and I don't think, other than the fact there is clearly a contract in place, but I can't see a world where we see Sergio Perez back on a Formula One grid next year, which is a shame for him that he hasn't been given a sign-off, because he has been a Formula One driver for a long time and has achieved some pretty good things, generally speaking, over the course of his career with Force India and Racing Point and obviously now Red Bull and Sauber before that. So to be kind of almost shunned out and humiliated by idiots like us on podcasts saying that he's useless is unfair. But I don't see, unless kind of Telmex or whatever it is turn up with an extra £100 million for Red Bull next year, and it's then called Red Bull Telmex, I can't see a world where he's back.
No. What I didn't get with Perez's DNF, we never learnt why he DNF'd. The bloke got spun.
They don't care anymore.
And then the bloke just went, nah, fuck it. And just parked it and just went, I'm going home. I can't be bothered with this anymore. Yeah. Like, okay, he might have absolutely had a giant hole in his radiator, or the car might have actually exploded, but we never saw it on the broadcast because there was quite a lot of other bumping into each other going on. And it was never explained by anyone. It just looked like he gave up. And I'm sure he didn't, but he just went from, I've been spun, to, oh, Perez is out the car. Like, I didn't really get it. It's the same with Liam Lawson. Liam Lawson got out of his car while it was still moving. I don't know if you saw that. It was rolling down.
Well, that one was on fire, I think,
exit road. Oh, was it? Oh, that's worse. But
I think so.
The car
was
was
smoke.
rolling forward, and he was getting out of it, just putting the wheel back. It's like, Liam, pop the brakes on first, mate, then get out of the car. Yeah. It's a little bit easier, because at the minute you're just rolling towards a barrier. No.
Put the handbrake on.
Perez,
do you reckon they've got like a button handbrake, or do you reckon they've got one of those...
I think it's the little paddly one, you know, where it's just that little parking brake lever that the light goes on that confuses people when they drive the car for the first time.
The one that you have to kind of pull in almost as if you're kind of like extracting something from the front of a car.
Just a little, like a boot pop parking brake.
Yeah, nice.
No, I don't think. I think the writing is very much on the wall. I don't think we're going to see Sergio next year.
No.
I think you've said it all there, that he deserved more applause. Take your money and run, Sergio. Fair play, my son. Get as much money out of them as you can, because they shouldn't have renewed you, is the simple answer. They had the cheaper get-out clause, and for whatever reason, they decided not to take it, and now it's going to cost them more, so that's their problem. I think we're probably going to see Liam in there.
Do you think Liam?
Could be a bit of a death sentence for Liam. I think Liam, and I think it could be a bit of a career ender, possibly, or certainly might not be a fairy tale story. I might be absolutely wrong. I wonder whether they're putting Liam in there almost as a holdover until they can go and get someone else they like more, perhaps, and they're almost happy to throw him to the wolves.
Because Isaac Hadjar in a F2 press conference kind of said that he was racing in Formula One next year, but didn't say he was racing in Formula One next year, which obviously Which, if that is the case, then we do know that either Tsunoda or Lawson are going to get promoted from that V-Carb into the big team, because then Hadjar's going to take that seat, which then, of course, nullifies those loose rumours about Christian Horner leaving the Williams room again. He might just be good mates with James Vowles. We don't really know, do we? Because they're trying to sign potentially Carlos Sainz or maybe Franco Colapinto, whichever one they can possibly get. Carlos Sainz, interestingly, I saw some theory come up to say that he might be driving for Mercedes next year, because took George once for a race to replace Lewis Hamilton, and it's happened once before, so therefore they might do it again. But maybe that's a story for another day. Obviously, Tsunoda has the drive during this post-season test with Red Bull, which before we started recording, you said is an attempt to keep Honda sweet going into to continue their relationship. I think deep down, based on what we've seen in a short sample size from Liam Lawson and a longer sample size from Tsunoda, we both know that they're probably not going to be Formula One world champions. Does Red Bull want another Formula One world champion to go into that seat next to Max? I'd argue and say no. I think they are very much an all eggs in one basket team, and they need somebody just to kind of make sure that they get the constructors as well, because it's worth a few more quid that they can then spend on bourbon biscuits and custard creams in Milton Keynes. That rhymes, actually. Well done, me. But I don't know. I think it is. I think it probably is a death sentence, but I don't necessarily see Lawson having a particularly long Formula One career anyway. I don't think he's done enough in that V-carb for me to look at it and go, blimey, we're going to be talking about this bloke for 12 years now. Yeah. I don't think he has. And we know he's part of that family that can just chop and change people quite quickly. He's not kind of an independent driver that's going to potentially go and sit in Sauber for 6 years or whatever. He's going to get bumped out by a Hadjar next, or Iwasa, or whoever it might next be coming up through that Red Bull Junior program, because the grass is always greener on the other side, and actually they might not lose much from binning them out and having a go with somebody else.
Yeah. No, I think there's also probably a succession plan in place that Max has been very vocal that Max is not going to Fernando Alonso himself and, drive until he's 81. Yeah. And it's, we're probably already into the twilight possibly of Max Verstappen, the Formula One driver. Not Max Verstappen, the driver, but certainly Max Verstappen, the Formula One driver. So whether they're...
Yeah, we'll still see him sim racing.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll still sim racing. He's going to, go do other exciting stuff. But yeah, whether they're almost in a bit of a holding pattern of, we're absolutely not going to challenge Max while he's here. Let's try and let Max just, be the absolute top dog for the couple more years that we've got him, and then we'll reassess after that. Yeah, it's an interesting one. You then saw Carlos Sainz jump straight into that Williams and stick at top of the timings on the post-season test day one. I know you can't really look into... particularly post-season testing times don't actually sort of mean a huge amount, but I would love Carlos next year just to outdrive that Williams and to have a really good year, because the bloke does not deserve to be in the Williams. This is no shade on Williams whatsoever, but the bloke deserves to be in a top 4 team. I don't even care which colour the team is, but he deserves to be in a top 8 on the grid every week team, even if it is P8. I think he's gone head-to-head with Charles all year, so I would like to see Carlos have a good year next year, and I will follow him closely. I think he'll be one of... I like to have a driver... I like McLaren to do well, obviously, and then Danny Rick was my other driver. Like, I like to see McLaren do well, and then I can also look out for Danny Rick. And I think next year maybe Carlos might be my... I'd like to see McLaren do well, and then I'd also like to see Carlos do well.
Well, I think it's possible. I think it's very possible. But we've waffled for 38 minutes now, so I think we probably need to get the checkered flag out for this.
Well, there's a little bit more waffle first, though.
But
there's more waffle.
There's more.
If you want to talk about waffle, good Lord, the F1 film does not look like it's going to be great, does it?
Oh, jeez.
From what we've seen, it's not boding well for old Bradley and that film, because I think we saw the world's most depressing podium celebrations after Abu Dhabi.
Yeah.
And it was not the real one.
All of it's a bit guff, isn't it? I made the cheese reference earlier, and it made you feel kind of warm and gooey, and it's nice. This one, have you seen that one? Like, I think it's in France somewhere, and they've got like actual maggots like in the cheese to make it extra kind of fermented. It feels like that's going to be the Apex GP F1 movie cheese. I think. Right. Okay. So the big issue is the fact that everybody's seen what happens. We all know the end of the movie.
They filmed both endings. No, they filmed both. They filmed both. Well, the other bloke. Okay. They went and did it again.
Well, so we know one of them wins the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. We know that from a miraculous recovery from Vegas, Brad Pitt is nearly dead on the centre of the start-finish straight.
He did, didn't he?
At no point has any kind of long-term issues there whatsoever. He collapsed. He collapsed on the circuit, and 3 weeks later, he's lifting the trophy on the podium in Abu Dhabi. It feels like it's going to be cheesy. All of like the somebody somewhere has kind of bought into this, and they've created this Instagram and TikTok profile for it, and it's guff, it's cheesy, it's awful. I can't believe anybody is liking those tweets. That must be some form of like backdoor algorithm work where people are actually kind of liking this stuff and commenting on it, because nobody buys into it. I will watch it because I feel there is an episode of the podcast for it, but I do think it is going to be one of the worst. Hey, speaking of worst Formula One films, have you seen the new Senna thing on Netflix?
No. I just saw the Norfolk drama.
Yeah, so this probably means nothing to you because, I don't know, maybe you are a big fan of Snetterton in Norfolk and your geography of English counties is quite good, but Norfolk traditionally is fairly flat. And Snetterton in particular is quite flat because I believe, and I'm no expert, but I think the flatter the ground, the easier it is to land aeroplanes. Because if you try and land it on spiky bits...
go up again.
Normally that doesn't go particularly well. Yet we've gotten Snetterton in Norfolk filmed what I assume is probably in the French or the Swiss Alps somewhere. And we've got... How has that ever made it past any form of fact check? Snetterton exists, lads. Just get on the blower to Snetterton and just say, we're filming this for Netflix. How much is it going to cost us to rent Snetterton for the day? Because we need to take some shots for it. Like, it's not that hard, is it? These circuits only get used for like 5 months every weekend for the summer. That leaves Monday through Thursday completely free and vacant. Yet they've decided to use some AI CGI Swiss Alp bollocks going around the background of a Senna movie when he's testing a car in fucking Norfolk, for Christ's sake. And if that's what we've got to learn from. This is what we've got to look forward to with Apex or F1 GP or whatever the piss and heck this shitty movie's going to be called. All it's going to do is make Drive to Survive look fucking brilliant.
What I do like is that you've just had Charles and George... Well, you just had Charles lose a World Constructors title, and you just had George finish like P5 or something, and then they've made them go back up onto the podium to spray some of the most depressing champagne I've ever seen. And then even better, the next day, they've made them get back in the cars and pretend to race Brad Pitt around the circuit. They just want to go home. But now they're having to do multiple fake podium celebrations. I've never seen a limper champagne bottle in my entire life. But look, like you said, we'll both watch it. I don't hold out a huge amount of hope for it. I don't know really who it's for. I don't think it's going to be like Drive to Survive is going to convince people to like F1. I don't think people that like F1 are going to like it. I think if you already don't like F1, you're probably then not going to go and watch it. It's a bit like Perez at Red Bull. I don't know why it's happening. And I don't know why it's still happening. And I don't know who signed off on it in the first place. But it is what it is. It is what it is. Right. I think we've put the world to rights there on Formula One. Formula One for 2024. That sums all of that up. Dan, where can they find you on the internet if they'd like to see you do things other than Formula One?
Yeah, have a little search for Dan Jads on all social media platforms, and you will find some things that aren't Formula One related going on those platforms. And well, you don't exist, do you? At the moment, you're a sleeper cell at the minute. Yeah.
Just spend your time on me, just going and liking Lapdown Pod stuff on Insta and TikTok and YouTube, and subscribe on there. And maybe send a pod to your friends, or maybe send one of those videos to your friends, or maybe even leave us a 5-star review, because that all helps. But we'll be back at some point. Now, I will say, the cadence of pods over the winter break may be strange. Who knows? It might be every Wednesday. We might take a week off at some point. There might be a small gap in the middle. We'll find out how much there is to talk about in the world of F1, and knowing F1, there'll probably be quite a lot. But just keep an eye out, basically. Stay subscribed to the feed, and you'll see it when it pops up. In the meantime, if you've got any ideas, lapdownpod@gmail.com. Feel free to email us with any thoughts or questions or anything you would like us to pull apart with our incredibly intellectual minds. But until then, thank you for listening and watching, and we'll see you all next time.